at less cost, not cheaper. Yeah, big difference. Sometimes there's necessity to look at cost cutting, and we looked at cost cutting by removing the road and the parking lot down below. But through the process, we were able to pay for the additional cost for the retention of the wall or the bank. We got that back in, and later on in the project, we were able to get most of the road in and the lower parking area. So that's what I mean by, significant savings. If this were a hard bid project, the contractor would have no incentive to provide anything.
Right.
And that's really what you look for, is this
incentive to
team effort.
submit a proposal for a change order, which
Right.
are always more expensive.
And the other thing is typically what we see is on fees are between, and in the findings it notes, we expect to see somewhere between 3 and 5%, and we've never seen anything get up to 3%. They range from as low as 1.75% to 2.8% or 2.79%. What was it on the? 2.35. 2.35 on the police station. So every change that comes up, the cost of that retention was the actual cost of the retention. The only markup was the 2.35. So, and that's the incentive that I'm talking about. The contractor knows from the beginning what he can expect to make off of the project. So all he's got to do is look forward to making it successful.
You had mentioned the value engineering piece, and it was noted in here. Do we create kind of a list of potential value engineering items beforehand so that we know if we're starting to
Yes.
creep up there, that we kind of have to start looking at the bottom of the list and start chipping away, and we have kind of a list of non-negotiables that we are not willing to?
Exactly.
That's-
The contractor develops a list, and it sometimes, annoys the architect, and sometimes annoys the owner. It's a list. It's a list of everything that he can think of, and there's compromises. And as we go through the process, some of them are easy. Some of them he might suggest a less costly roof that performs just as well. All of these kinds of things are looked at, they're identified, they're tracked, and you may say, no, absolutely not, but they stay on the list, and we continue to go through them. And this list exists all the way to the end of the job. So there's always something that we can look at to trade, to barter with, to make life just a little bit easier and assure that we're going to get to the end of the job with all our funds. The other thing is the contractor, in this particular case, when he gives us his guaranteed maximum price, he's allowed to have a contingency. And that contingency is used for various elements. He provides us with the guaranteed maximum prior to going out to solicit subcontract bids. And if he doesn't receive a bid, or if we have some fluctuation and need to do some more, some of the contingency could be used for working with bids, okay? Also, if there's a major scope gap or something like this, something that, nobody thought about, or something like this, the contingency continues to be used through construction, and it's for his sole use, all right? His sole use doesn't include parties or this sort of stuff. Everything, every cost, since he's paid for all costs, he tracks all costs. Any changes, any adjustments that could conceivably be a part of the project are included in that contingency. So with that in mind, we don't have change orders for design errors. We don't have change orders for the stores missing the proper type of hardware. We just have cost adjustments throughout the course of the construction using the contingency. It's his to manage, but all of us, the owner, the architect, and your project managers, we scrutinize every dime that's spent.
I guess my last it's more of a comment, and, you talk about it in the layout here, at the end of the project, we own it. It's our baby to take care of, and as I very well know, the library is a passionate piece and can be, it's a very passionate piece. Is there a way, Amanda, and with you guys, I'm sure the change orders and the value engineering piece could probably come fast and furious, but just as a communication piece with, at least I'd like to see just when some of those things are coming across, that we're just kept abreast and aware of what changes are occurring.
Absolutely.
We don't want to.
Absolutely.
Along
We
the list,
require that
but-
the contractor keep an accounting of all costs, all adjustments, and typically what we try to look at is that everything is settled prior to a payment application, so we're getting this like once a month, and we get updates of their, what they do is they keep what they call a change order request log, COR log, or change order proposal log, COP. There's a lot of different acronyms for the process. But what they do is they track all costs, and what we require is that they provide a ROM, rough order of magnitude for cost, actual cost, approved or not, and we just track it, and it keeps a tally of what the contingency amount is and what impact on a monthly basis.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. No, I'm good. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, on Brian's point there about keeping track of this project, we're lucky. One of the things I've always talked about at our budget hearings is wanting to make sure that our staff has sufficient a training budget, and Amanda has just completed a project manager class and is now a certified project manager, so we're going to be keeping track of you much better than we ever have before. So I'm happy about that. I know nothing about construction. I know a little bit about communication. And I think, to expand on what Brian said, it's not just the agency and the council that needs to be informed, but the public. I think a lot of the success that we had on the First Avenue project was due to the early and often communication. And this is going to be a bigger project involving more people, moving stuff around, tearing things up. So I just want to re-emphasize something you said early on in your remarks, is the need to communicate internally as well as with our citizens. On the process itself, I've never been a fan of the low bid. Back in the days when I was a contract manager with the state was big on it, and we ended up taking low bids and then having contract failures because the companies went bankrupt because it took them more time to do
Archives
what
building for
they
one.
thought, and finally now we have the ability to go through exceptions. And then also, I just think of how fortunate we are on this project, that not every project has an empty building to stage
Exactly.
its staff, that we'd be out looking for leasable space for a bunch of people if we couldn't move them from one place to another here. So go out, do a good job, and don't screw up.
Any other comments?
I'm, like with Commissioner Parker, I'm not a fan of the low bid either. I mean, we launched moon rockets doing it, but, On this type of well-qualified project, what are the objections to this process?
The process, as it started out, got kind of a black eye in that it just appeared that there were only a few general contractors that seemed to fit the bill. And so as the process started to gain in popularity, those contractors with the experience kept getting the jobs. And a lot of the contractors that I'd have a public hearing like this, and there would be people that vehemently objected to the findings. They could not support their objection typically because the findings are quite typically pretty sound. But they wanted to argue. they wanted to argue, and my take of the matter was that the process was abused. This process, you get to pick your contractor. This process is set up so that it could be abused. And I think it was abused to start with. You could pick the contractor you wanted. You just go through the process and then pick who you wanted. And I think it took a coalition that was made up of members of the state, members of the architectural community, the contracting community, to really lay out a white paper to describe how the process should be used. And that's the process that we're familiar with. That's a process that my firm and my people have used and are familiar with. It's a process that really came from the AG's office. I've done several projects, all CMGC, for the state of Oregon through the Department of Administrative Services. The fortunate thing there is their contracting board is the Attorney General's office. And so if you had questions, you could go right to the source and get a ruling. So that had a big influence, but it's like I said at the beginning, every project is different. It's not necessary to use this process for everything. And I think it was used for everything. And especially, I think some of the bigger culprits were school districts. They had local contractors that they wanted to use. And they had bad experiences with low bid. The other true thing about the process is, I can't remember the city attorney's name that retired.
Kelly?
John Kelly.
Yeah, it's like he said when we were presenting our findings. The best way to describe this process is you're not required to take the low bid. That's it, bottom line. And when the contractor goes out and solicits subcontractors, and he'll receive subcontractors from the asphalt guy that decides that now he's going to be building cabinets or something like this. He knows what's available out there. He's the expert. He goes through, and you have to allow him to protect his guaranteed maximum price. So if he sees a contractor that's bid too low and he sees failure, he will elect to make up the difference by going to the next lowest bid and being assured a success. That's what's allowed. The biggest difference, and a lot of people don't understand this, the CMGC is required to competitively bid the process. He is not required to publicly bid. He can't. Subcontractors don't publicly bid. They'll fax you a bid, they'll call in a bid, they'll qualify. You'll receive a bid for steel with no fabrication, steel with fabrication. You provide all the lumber, no nails. Or lumber with nails, lumber and framing, you get all these different components. And when you put out a bid, a public bid, you're not allowed to qualify your bid. But in subcontracting, they don't, they qualify everything. So it's only a competitive bid that's required. So, and again, it's the latitude that allows him to protect his guaranteed maximum price.
There are places where a competitive bid is appropriate. And
Oh,
the
absolutely.
example I used the other night was our annual street paving project, you know, where our engineer specs the material, the component, how much asphalt, how much of the aggregate and so on. They specify the number of feet or yards or miles or, you know, some measurement, and it's a fairly straightforward system, and that's an ideal thing for competitive bid. The Sequoia Avenue overpass, I think, is another one that's pretty straightforward. It's forming, it's concrete, it's paving, it's base fill, and, you know, it's not a scheduling issue particularly, because it's all new fields, you know. It's not rebuilding something that's already there. So, I mean, there are places for every.
There are, and it's not to say that you couldn't possibly have success for projects that really, really appear to be the only way to do it would be a CMGC process, especially where you have, one of the projects that comes to mind is Newburgh School District put out a proposal. It was a qualification in a bid. It was not a CMGC process. So what they received was a hard bid. And the thought was, well, if we don't get our bids in, and it was very, very complex. It involved 11 different schools with all sorts of various amounts of remodeling, remediation, very complicated. And they put it out, and it was a hard bid. And they received their bids, and the low bid was $1,200,000 over their budget. Now, you can always negotiate with a low contractor at a low bid. That's allowed. But when you stop and you think about it, in a competitive bid situation, those contractors already gave you everything they can to get the job. So when you come in overbid, you're not talking about going out and value engineering, you're talking about cost cutting.
Yeah.
You know? But in that particular process, they ended up with the same contractor that we had on the police station. And this contractor did buy into the process, bought in to their problem, and really, really worked hard. The district had to get additional financing, but that process, the design bid build process did work. And it had to do with the contractor, it had to do with the players that were involved. So I'm not saying that this is the answer to everything, but, you know, looking at this and the complexities that we've got, it makes the most sense.
Yeah. Given, or assuming that we pass the resolution tonight, what's the near-term schedule?
We are right now on the verge of completing the RFP for the CMGC. We're waiting for the final comments, which I expect will be to us tomorrow. And
Final comments from legal counsel?
From the attorney,
Legal counsel.
from the city's legal people. And we will combine the package. It'll be quite a large amount of documentation. It includes a pre-construction contract, a construction contract. Pre-construction services will start when the contractor provides us with a guaranteed maximum price. We will execute a construction contract, and so all of these documents, plus we've got schematic designs that are now complete that we can include for the contractor to get a good idea of what the project involves and what it's going to cost and what his costs are going to be, so he can provide us with his general conditions, plus all the other components that are necessary for construction. It's a pretty complete package. We expect to have that ready to solicit Friday of this week. And we'll call for proposals on the 27th.
That's
I think it's
proposals
27th.
back in from...
Yes, we call for proposals to the RFP, the 28th, okay. And I got my dates, I got a lot of dates in my head right now. We'll have a pre-proposal meeting where we'll invite all the contractors to come in, so we got an opportunity to talk to them, give them a presentation, let them ask questions, so that if they see anything in our RFP that needs clarification, we'll send out an addendum. The process typically includes a selection committee, and the selection committee will have a set of criteria for scoring. After the selection committee has scored, typically the three, and it's not limited to three, highest scoring contractors or proposers will be interviewed. And that's where the real fun begins.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to those interviews, that's where they really, really try to sell. And you see the side of contractors that you don't typically see. Yeah. It's really exciting. And so we're expecting that we'll have a contractor aboard in April. and we can start the process. We're going to be starting design development drawings, so it's a good time for him to come in. His first task will be to provide a preliminary cost estimate based on the schematic design documents that he has. So we've got something to work with. He'll start immediately to develop his list of value engineering ideas and also review the schedule for completion to see that everything fits. Then we'll start a series of meetings and whatnot to go through the value engineering ideas and look at the costs that he's got in his estimate. Anything that's high, we're going to have to look at what we can do to bring it back into line. And it's just a working process all the way up until we get through with the documents. Actually, we won't be through with the documents. We'll be probably about 90% complete about the time we're ready to submit for permits. He will go through, do a final estimate, provide us with his guaranteed maximum price, and we have a period of, I believe, 5 days to negotiate that contract to get it to fit our budget and our timeline. Otherwise, we can go to the next lowest proposer with no other commitments to the first selection.
I had the,
Run that forward to me to what date that might be then,
The actual selection, I don't have it. Do you have a copy of it?
just roughly.
Oh, we got a schedule right here. There it is. All right. Let's see.
That week that you would be negotiating the guaranteed maximum.
Okay, let's see. Interviews, tentative award April 5th, beginning of their pre-construction services April 10th. CMGC will submit a GMP June 3rd.
Okay.
And that will be probably an early site pack